Okay, welcome. My name is Bruce Miller, and I'm with RIMtech Consulting. And we're here today to talk about a really innovative and exciting new way to deploy EDRMS projects a lot faster, a lot safer, and a lot less expensively. We call it Catalyst. So let's get going then. So Catalyst is not a piece of software that we sell per se. It's a service that we created. It's a utility. It's a utility that we use for our clients to deploy EDRMS projects. So it has three components. The first is the retention schedule. And yes, you need a retention schedule in order to deploy any EDRMS. The second is an information architecture. And the third is a deployment tool. So let's take a closer look. The retention schedule is a cookie cutter retention schedule. It has 2,200 categories in it. And of those 2,200, about 600 are generic. And 1,600 of them are municipal specific. So if you're a municipality, then we think we have you covered completely. If you're not, then we have you probably 50% covered with 600 generic categories, such as committees, expense reimbursement, budgeting, audits, the usual business activities in the retention schedule. And this is a machine-ready, software-ready retention schedule. It's vendor neutral and it's technology neutral. And it's human readable, but it's also machine readable. So it's ready to be imported into any of the 5 software products that you can use to manage records in SharePoint. Now, speaking of SharePoint, you have to have what we call a SharePoint information architecture. What is that? That is the answer to the question, where do you store your stuff in SharePoint? So that would be the libraries, the columns, the metadata, content types, term store, which is really just a fancy name for list values for metadata that's populated with a list, and library views. So everything you need to set up in SharePoint comes out of the box with Catalyst. Number 3 is we have it's part of it is a tool to deploy that SharePoint information architecture. So it as a tool, a utility, you don't see it, you don't touch it. We run it remotely. So you say to us, here's our tenant and our site. Uh, Please build your EDRMS at that site. Okay. Now, before we go any further, there's an important concept that I really need you to understand, which is in any EDRMS, and by any, I mean any system based on these 5 products you see right here on the right-hand side of the screen. Gimmal, Purview, Collabware, RecordPoint, or Opus by AvePoint. Doesn't matter which product you use, but you got to have one of them, right? So in any EDRMS, there are 2 types of rules. Few people know this, but it's so important. There are retention rules, but then there are content rules. Content rules are far more important than retention rules, okay? So I just want you to be aware of that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but you can't have one without content rules, okay? So again, this is a very vendor neutral presentation. It doesn't matter what software you're using. You have 6 steps you have to follow. None of them are negotiable, absolutely none of them. And they have to be in the order shown, okay? And they can be really expensive and really time consuming. Very high level, we're going to have one treatment for each of these 6, but very high level, you have to basically take your existing retention schedule and kind of smash it a bit with a hammer and say, well, that won't work. So you're going to have to restructure it and feed it into your record keeping software, whatever product you choose. Then you're going to need a SharePoint information architecture that the record software can use. You're going to have to define that architecture and then construct it. Only then can you reach the last and final step, the pinnacle, so to speak. Step 6 is create automated record keeping rules. That means content rules, okay? Content rules. And that's what I've been saying for a while now, which is that's the secret sauce to an EDRMS. Few people understand that fully, but step 6 is really, really important. So we're going to cover each of these 6 steps, okay? Step one is to define the retention schedule. So what the heck is wrong with your retention schedule? Plenty. It's probably written by humans and meant to be read by humans and interpreted by humans and acted upon by humans. None of that happens in a modern EDRMS. EDRMS systems are fully automated by necessity. And if you want, we have a YouTube video on just that. Why do you need a retention schedule that's different? And how do you construct it? Just look at our YouTube channel. You'll find all you need about that. So you have to feed this retention schedule into your record keeping software. And funny, but it's true. You need a retention schedule that nobody will ever see, encounter, or utilize. Yeah, you need a retention schedule no one will ever see. Who's going to see it? One of these 5 products is. They'll act on it, but no humans will ever see it. So that's really, really important. So this is a classic screen capture of a good old-fashioned retention schedule, complete with all the terminology we're used to for years and years and years, decades even. So that's what an old retention schedule looks like. You have to move from that to this, which is a modern retention schedule. We call it a software-ready retention schedule. And it has a few things that are really different from a classic one. Number one is this. It explicitly defines what case records are. If you don't understand what case records are, then you are in desperate need of seeing another YouTube video we have about case records. So I call it the Achilles heel of modern record systems and people for that matter. It also has a what we call content rules in there. Because again, a modern EDRMS cannot exist, cannot work without content rules. Retention rules are not enough. You need content rules. So this is a close-up of what a typical activity would look like. Each row is an activity or business activity or record series in the retention schedule. This is a close-up of what the content rules look like. So you have your business activity, your retention rules on the right, but these new things, content rules, have to be in there. What is a content rule? Well, it's something that says for this content in SharePoint, apply this retention rule to it. It's like the middleman between the business activity or the records and the retention rules, okay? So in a typical uh, uh, retention schedule, we could see as many as 2,500 content rules, okay? They are machine readable, and each content rule, and for that matter, each retention rule, have to have a name. They have to have names. That's new. Traditional retention schedules didn't need that, but they do now. Why? Because the 5 software products need a name. So now we have defined our new retention schedule. Now we're going to have to generate it. Step 2. What does it look like? Well, you've seen what it looks like when you define it. It's a spreadsheet. But when it's finished, it's not a spreadsheet because it's machine readable. So this is a human readable rendition of your retention schedule. So if you want to look at it, pass it around, get it approved, review, have your legal department check on it, this is what it looks like. It's a rendition only. It is not the retention. Well, it is the retention schedule. It just looks a little different than what you're used to. Why? Because it contains things you're not used to, such as library names, content rule names. That's what it takes to be machine readable for a modern retention a record software. Now, step 3 is really simple. We have to get that thing into SharePoint, not into SharePoint, but into one of these 5 products that you purchased, right? What does that look like? Well, I'll give you one example out of 5. This is what it looks like in Purview. Uh, uh, this is the retention schedule inside Purview, what they call a file plan. And you can see the language, the structure is quite different than a classic retention schedule. But it is what it is. This is proprietary to Purview, right? Now, step 4 comes a much bigger step. Now we have our retention schedule. and it's loaded into the record keeping software. But guess what? The record keeping software can't work without a proper SharePoint information architecture. You've got to have a proper architecture or the rules can't work. So what does that architecture look like? Well, think of it like a three-layer cake. Now this is your entire system. The green layer on the bottom right here is your retention schedule. Let's pretend we have a 1,000-user organization with 800 categories in the retention schedule, which would be pretty typical. Of those 800, typically 60% or 480 would be case activities. What are case activities? Well, again, there's a YouTube video we have on it, but in short, they're event-driven retention activities, event-driven. So the retention rules, shown here as little brown tags, are applied to entire cases, not to individual records. So 800 in total, 480 case categories on the right, 320 non-case on the left, where retention rules are applied directly to documents, individual documents. Level 2, come up a level. Now we're in SharePoint. What do we have? We have 800 libraries, one for each category in the retention schedule. And on the right, we have 480 case libraries, which are broken into cases. And those cases are document sets. On the left, we have 320 libraries, which are not broken into cases. And each one of those libraries is going to have, in a healthy system, an average of 14 metadata fields or columns to describe the documents in that activity. And by definition, each of the unique batches of metadata in each of these 800 libraries will be different than the other 799. So now we have 800 places to store our documents. Why? Well, because we're doing 800 different business activities. Now, this is where it gets super interesting in the top. The top layer is invisible. What is it? It's the record software you purchase, Purview, Collabware, RecordPoint, whatever. Um, and in it, you create automation rules. The automation rules say this. They say if library equals audits and final report equals yes, then apply retention rule, end date plus 6 years and destroy, or what have you, right? So these are the content rules that I mentioned a minute ago. And once you've got these content rules written, and there will be a lot of them, typically 3 per library, man, that's 2,400 of them, then what that has the effect of locking the 3 layers together like Lego blocks. You can't move it around after this because the rules contain the library names and the names of the metadata columns. So if you tinker with the SharePoint system, the yellow layer in the middle, the rules break and you're no longer compliant. So the records software needs stability and predictability in the SharePoint in order for it to consistently apply the right retention rules to the right content. And we have other YouTube videos and training courses that we offer on how to write these content rules. So now we have the thing designed. We now have typically a gargantuan spreadsheet with 800 named libraries in there and 800 by 14 metadata columns. That's 11,200 metadata column usages. We've got all that work done, and that work is finished. Now, in step 5, we have to bring it to life in SharePoint. We have to deploy or install or configure, create, I guess is the better word, that information architecture. Someone has to create the 800 libraries, create the content types, create all those columns. That is one heck of a big ask. That could take you a year and could cost you in the hundreds of thousands. For that matter, so could step 4, okay? But it's got to be done. Why? Well, we can't move to step 6, which is the rules at the top. Remember these rules here, these content rules? I call it RBR, rules-based record keeping. It's content rules and retention rules. So you can't enter those rules or create them until the piece below exists because the software is going to say, which library, which columns are you talking about? So by definition, step 6 has to be done after step 5. So that's a really high level overview, but you absolutely have to wait until step 5 is done. So what does step 5 look like? Well, once it's finished, it'll create the 800 libraries, all the site columns, 11,200 column mappings, and create the content types that contain the columns and all, even the library views. So Catalyst will create this, completely deploy this SharePoint IA by itself. So you're saving yourself months for sure, possibly years, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because Catalyst just does it for you based on the definitions earlier. So this is what it would look like when it's deployed. A sample. This is a library called Competitive Procurement. It's a case library, so it's broken into cases. All the metadata is all up and running. So you've got yourself a fully functional SharePoint IA at this point. The only thing you don't have is permissions. We do not do permissions. So this is a bit of a closer looking view. This is what a case library looks like in SharePoint. And you can see that these are the document sets right here. One document set for every case. Every case is an adventure. Every adventure generates records unique to that adventure or that case. So users store documents in cases like this. Now we're done. Now we go to step 6, which is the automated retention rules. This is the secret sauce. I highly, highly recommend you watch our YouTube video on how to do this. Automated record keeping in an EDRMS. So you have to create these things called content rules. Every rule has a part, or a name. We have a condition, which the condition specifies which records are in SharePoint are we talking about? And then you have to have a a retention rule that will be applied to those documents in SharePoint. So how do you express which documents? Well, you use what's called a condition. And the condition could be anything you want, but it would typically say library equals audits and final report equals yes, that's a condition. And if that condition is met, apply this retention rule to it. Okay, that's basically how it works. So I call this the beating heart of an EDRMS. And I really mean that. That's what makes the blood circulate in an EDRMS. Remember, we have to combine 3 things here: a retention schedule, plus SharePoint, plus a records management software product. All 3 things have to work together. And what makes them work together? The content rules. So if you're using Purview, they're called auto-apply policies. If you're using Gimmal, they're called life cycles. RecordPoint patterns, it doesn't matter what they're called, they all work the same. Okay? So this is an example right here. If library is audits and the metadata field final report contains yes, then you want to assign this retention rule to it. Number 7, which says audit end date plus 10 years, then destroy. Notice that every content rule has a name. Every retention rule has a name. Okay? So what about the other documents in this audits library that aren't the final report? The emails, the spreadsheets, the data, the versions, everything else. Well, that's library equals audits and final report equals no. That's the condition that meets the remaining documents in that library. For that, we're going to use the rule 5 destroy, which is time-based. Keep 5 years and then destroy. That's a leftover. The leftover documents used to create the final report. The retention value is not as high. So that's how it works. In a typical EDRMS for perhaps 1,000 users, what you're going to get is you'll typically see about 100 uniquely different retention rules, maximum 100. It can be as low as 50. And then you'll have typically 800 categories in your retention schedule. If so, you will typically end up with 3 content rules per library. That's 2,400 content rules, that you have to write. But as you can see, this accounts for all your content in SharePoint, every bit of it. Without these content rules, software can do nothing. Nothing at all. So this in yellow is what the content rules look like inside your retention schedule. Okay. And yeah, they have to be in the retention schedule because that's what the retention schedule is. It says for these records, this is the retention rule we're going to abide by. So the content rules have to be in your retention schedule and they have to be in the records keeping software, right? And again, each unique content rule calls one of your retention rules. So what does this look like? Well, I'll give you one example. If you want to see more detail, look at um, our YouTube video. I forget the exact name of it, but I think it's called Automating Records in an EDRMS, something to that effect. But in it, I show content rules for all 5 software products. This one is for Purview. So here's what it looks like. Remember, there's a left-hand side and a right-hand side. The left-hand side is a condition. The right-hand side is a label that you're going to apply. So in Purview, what the heck is a label? A label is a retention rule. And here it is right here. The name of the label or retention rule is safety audits. And the details are it's a 10-year and then delete. Simple, simple retention rule. And we're going to apply this label to content that contains certain properties. Properties means metadata, including library names. So in this case, we want library name equals audits and document type equals reports. This is just an example. And this is what the condition, the content rule actually looks like. Now, it says refinable string 45 equals audits and refinable string 0 equals reports. We're not going to get into how to do that today, but if you want to know, then again, YouTube videos. We've got a video to show how to do that and training on how to do that. In the case of Purview, you have to have a what's called a KeyQL query. That's how you write auto apply policies. So recap, the auto apply policy is a content rule. KeyQL is the mini sort of programming language that you use to write a content rule or an auto apply policy. And this is an example of what one looks like. And yeah, you have to write a whole lot of them. So to summarize, the Catalyst toolkit completely automates step 5 and step 6. We have customers that we've brought all the way through all 6 of these many times. And sometimes just getting from step 1 to 2 can take you a year or 2 and can cost $50,000, $100,000. Why? Because every time someone shows us their 25-year-old retention schedule, it's too small. It doesn't reflect all the business activities. And we have to bring it up to the full size. And that typically, on average, means that we find that we have to make them 2 to 3 times larger than they are when they're presented to us, 2 to 3 times larger. Here's a litmus test I give the retention schedule. And I'm going to ask you, does your retention schedule today have this business activity? Laptop refresh. That's an activity where you replace all your laptops every 3, 4 years. It's big, it's expensive, it's complicated. It's a real important business activity. Do you have it? If not, then it's got to have it because real people use real SharePoint, and they're going to put stuff in there, whether it's accounted for in your retention schedule or not. So just going from steps 1 to 2 can cost you hundreds of thousands and take years. Step 3 should only take you an afternoon. Step 4 can take you another year or 2 because you had to figure out what the heck is the metadata that we need and want for every one of these 800 or so libraries. That can take a long time. Again, I've seen it take, and we've actually done this, uh, $50,000, $100,000, even $200,000. And a year, even 2 years can go by. When you're done, then you hand it over to IT and say, I hope you're not too busy this afternoon. Can you take this spreadsheet with 11,200 rows and build it all? That is another year or two. And then when we're done all of that, only then, when SharePoint is fully deployed, can the records manager sit down and write their 2,400 content rules, which could take another year. Okay? So all this is real. None of this is avoidable. And the numbers I'm giving you are real and practical. So this is my conclusion. Number one is that if your software is Purview, then of the 5 software products, I can assure you that Purview is by far the most complicated, the most difficult, and the most challenging to deploy for a whole bunch of reasons. But it is by far the most challenging, and it has 2 severe limitations. And if you want to know more, then you can find out about them on our YouTube video or take our training course. The 2 are, number 1, refinable strings. It's a mathematical internal limit that severely limits your auto step 6. And event-based retention is a big issue in Purview. It's not easy, it's not straightforward, and many people around the world are doing basically what amounts to customizations and hacks to try to figure out how to do it. We do it properly, quickly, and efficiently. We've overcome both of these with Catalyst. Catalyst also has a software-ready retention schedule, so we save you. If you're a municipality, we'll save you 100% of your work. If you're not, we'll save you maybe 50%. Who knows? Could be more, could be less, but at least halfway there. Catalyst, when it deploys, the record keeping is fully automated. Now, I know what you're thinking. Stop thinking that. You're thinking, wait a minute, why do we need to automate? Users can do it. No, never, ever. Please don't ever let users get involved in record keeping. If you do, please quote me on this. You will fail. Okay. In the case of Purview, out of the box, it's meant to be used by users and not automated. Don't go there. Automate, please, automate. Okay. It's the only way to be successful. And yes, I know what you can guess what I'm going to say next. We have YouTube videos to prove that. Okay. So once Catalyst finishes deploying, it is a fully automated system with zero involvement from users. Okay. It saves years, come down to weeks, hundreds of thousands of dollars come down way down, way down. Uh, I've seen $600,000-$700,000 projects. I saw a quote recently for above $1 million. Oh my gosh, you don't need to spend that much money for an EDRMS. This will make it a fraction of what it would otherwise be. And even equally importantly is with Catalyst, you avoid the 2 fatal mistakes that basically every single EDRMS project out there makes. Number 1, they can't do a disposition. Why not? Because they haven't hit minimum threshold of 85% classification accuracy. That is a life or death thing for an EDRMS. And yeah, we have a YouTube video on that too. Number 2 is the case records, event-driven retention. If you don't get that right, you're never going to do a disposition on 60 to 80% of your records. So Catalyst gets it right. And not only that, but when it finishes, we'll show you how to measure and prove that you've reached compliance. Okay? So that's it. That's all I have to say about Catalyst. I encourage you to ask any questions you might have. You can put it in the chat or you can unmute your mic and just ask me. I'm going to be here until the last question gets answered. No questions? All right, awesome. That's good. So You can expect an email from me tomorrow. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, Friday? I think it is. You can expect an email from me, and we will get you a link to download the recording. Okay? Will this presentation be posted on our YouTube channel? Excellent question. Answer, yes. That's where we put all our webinar recordings. So when you get the link tomorrow, it'll take you directly to the YouTube. Are there any other questions? No, I think we're good. Excellent. Okay. Well, keep an eye on our website and give us a call if you have any questions at all. And I'd be happy to follow up with you. Take some time. No obligation, no pressure. Just give me a call anytime. We can talk about it, your project. Thank you all for attending. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your day for this.